The scream tore from Nathan Faulkner's throat before his brain could catch up to what his eyes had seen. "Check your brakes." The words echoed across the empty parking garage, bouncing off concrete pillars and fluorescent lights that hummed their indifferent song. "Check your brakes, please." The sleek silver Mercedes sedan didn't slow. It glided toward the exit ramp with the effortless grace of a machine worth more than Nathan earned in 3 years. Behind the tinted windows, he caught a glimpse of Jade Stratton's profile, sharp and perfect, her attention fixed on the phone glowing in her hand. She didn't even turn her head. Why would she? He was just the night janitor, a ghost in coveralls pushing a mop bucket through the tomb of Stratton Automotive Headquarters long after the important people had gone home. Nathan stood frozen in the dim yellow pool of his cleaning cart's overhead light, his heart hammering against his ribs. His mop handle clattered to the ground. The sound it made was small and insignificant, swallowed by the vast concrete space. 30 seconds earlier, everything had been routine. He'd been moving through his nightly checklist with the mechanical precision of a man who'd memorized every stain, every corner, every shadow of this building over the past 5 years. He knew which fluorescent tubes flickered in Section D. He knew the executive parking level always smelled faintly of expensive leather and motor oil. He knew the CEO's reserved spot, number 1, right by the private elevator. What he hadn't known was that he'd witnessed a murder before it happened. He'd been emptying the trash can near the stairwell when he heard it. Not a sound exactly, but the absence of sound. The particular quality of silence that comes when someone is trying very hard not to be noticed. Nathan had developed an instinct for that kind of silence. When you're invisible to 99% of the people you encounter every day, you learn to read the room in ways others don't. You notice the shift in air pressure when a door opens. You feel the vibration of footsteps that are trying to be quiet. He'd looked up from the trash bag just in time to see a figure crouched beside the CEO's Mercedes. The person wore dark clothes and a baseball cap pulled low, face obscured by shadows. But it was the motion that had sent ice water through Nathan's veins. The figure was working underneath the car with quick, practiced movements. There was a brief metallic glint, a soft hiss, and then the person was up and moving, fast and low, disappearing through the emergency exit door before Nathan could even open his mouth. That's when he'd seen it. The dark puddle spreading slowly beneath the Mercedes, catching the light like spilled ink, brake fluid. He'd know that particular viscosity anywhere, the way it moved, slightly thicker than water, with an oily sheen. His hands had started shaking before his conscious mind caught up with what he was seeing. Someone had cut her brake line, and now she was driving away, completely unaware, heading toward the exit that would take her onto Riverside Drive, which would take her to the Mountain Pass Road, the winding 18-mile stretch of hairpin turns and sheer drop-offs that connected the city to the wealthy enclave of Highland Estates, where all the executives lived. A road that was dangerous enough with working brakes, a road that became a death sentence without them. "Check your brakes!" His voice cracked on the second shout, desperation making it shrill. A crazy man's voice, a nobody's voice. The Mercedes's brake lights flared red for just a moment as she slowed for the exit gate, and hope surged in his chest. She'd heard him. She was stopping. But no. The gate arm lifted automatically, her security pass already scanned, and she accelerated smoothly out into the night. The red lights disappeared around the corner, swallowed by the city's indifferent darkness. Nathan's legs moved before his brain authorized them. He sprinted toward his cart, grabbed his phone with trembling hands, and dialed 911. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Come on, come on, come on. He was running now, his work boots pounding across the concrete toward the employee parking section, toward his ancient pickup truck that was held together by rust and prayers. 911. What's your emergency? The operator's voice was calm, professional, maddeningly slow. There's been a murder attempt. No, not yet. A woman, her car, someone cut her brake line. She's driving right now on Riverside headed toward Mountain Pass Road. You have to stop her. You have to send someone. Sir, slow down. Can you give me your location and the vehicle description? Nathan rattled off the information as he reached his truck, yanking open the door that screamed in protest. He jammed the key into the ignition. The engine turned over once, twice, and died. Not now. Please, God, not now. He tried again, pumping the gas pedal. The engine coughed, sputtered, and finally caught with a reluctant roar. "Sir, officers are being dispatched to intercept the vehicle. Can you tell me your name and your relationship to the victim?" "Nathan Faulkner. I work for Stratton Automotive. I'm nobody. Just send someone. Please." He didn't wait for her response. He threw the phone onto the passenger seat and gunned the engine, his truck lurching forward with a grinding sound that suggested the transmission was making its final stand. The parking garage exit seemed impossibly far away, but he reached it, barely slowing for the gate arm, his employee card already in hand. The arm lifted with agonizing slowness, and then he was out, turning hard onto Riverside, the truck's tires screaming in protest. The city lights blurred past. Traffic was light this late, just past 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Most normal people were home. Most normal people weren't chasing their boss's car to prevent a murder. The absurdity of the situation tried to surface in his mind, but he pushed it down. There was no room for doubt. He'd seen the brake fluid. He'd seen the figure. He knew exactly what would happen when Jade Stratton reached the mountain pass and tried to slow down for that first hairpin turn. The same thing that had happened to Sarah. His hands tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. Not again. Not again. Please, not again. The memory tried to surface, the one he'd spent 5 years drowning in late-night shifts and deliberate exhaustion. Sarah's smile. The way she'd laughed when he'd told her the brakes were fine, that he'd personally checked them, that his certification meant something, that he'd never let anything happen to her. The phone call from the highway patrol. The word accident used over and over like a lie that could become truth through repetition. The investigation that revealed metal fatigue in a brake component he'd signed off on. The manufacturer's recall that came 3 weeks too late. The look in his daughter's eyes when he'd tried to explain why Mommy wasn't coming home. That was the day Nathan Faulkner, Chief Brake Systems Engineer for Velocity Automotive, had died. And in his place, a ghost had risen. A man who mopped floors and took out trash and made himself invisible because that was safer than being someone who mattered, someone whose mistakes could kill. But ghosts couldn't save people. And someone had to save Jade Stratton. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat. He grabbed it, keeping one eye on the road as the city began to thin out, buildings giving way to trees, streetlights becoming scarcer. The dispatcher's voice was tense. "Mr. Faulkner, we have units responding, but they're 15 minutes out from the Mountain Pass road entrance. Do you have visual on the vehicle?" Ahead of him, the road began to climb, and there, perhaps a quarter mile in the distance, he saw them, taillights, silver paint catching the moonlight, the Mercedes. "I see her," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm right behind her. Sir, do not attempt to intervene. Wait for officers to arrive." But Nathan knew the road. He'd driven it 1,000 times when he was someone else, someone who lived in Highland Estates, someone whose wife was alive. He knew that the first serious turn was 3 miles ahead. That's where most accidents happened. That's where the memorial markers dotted the guardrail, small white crosses marking where cars had gone over, where the mountain had claimed its tribute. The Mercedes was pulling away. Of course it was. His truck's top speed was a gasping 70 miles per hour on a good day with a tailwind. Jade's car was probably doing 90, maybe more. She was in a hurry, eager to get home, completely unaware that every mile brought her closer to the edge. He pressed the accelerator to the floor. The truck shuddered, the engine screaming, but it gave him a few more miles per hour. Not enough. Still not enough. The trees, pressed closer on either side now, dark sentinels in the night. The road began to twist, gentle curves that were a preview of what was coming. Nathan could see the Mercedes brake lights flashing red as she slowed for the turns. Still working. The line must have been cut carefully, designed to fail slowly, to give her enough distance from the city that help would be far away. Whoever had done this knew what they were doing. His phone buzzed again. A text from Mrs. Callahan, his neighbor who watched Amber on his night shifts. The girl was asking for him. Couldn't sleep, having trouble breathing again. Nathan's heart lurched. Amber, his beautiful, brave, chronically ill daughter who smiled through every hospital visit, every medication adjustment, every setback that cost money he didn't have. She needed him. She was the reason he worked 3 jobs, the reason he swallowed his pride and mopped floors and pretended his engineering degree and 15 years of experience didn't exist. Every dollar he earned went to her medical bills, her specialists, her medication that cost more than his rent. And here he was, chasing a woman who probably didn't even know his name, racing toward a situation that could get him killed, abandoning his daughter for a stranger. But he couldn't stop. Sarah's face floated in his mind, the way she'd looked in their wedding photos, radiant and alive and trusting him completely. He'd failed her. He'd signed off on breaks that killed her. He'd live with that until the day he died. But he didn't have to fail again. The road pitched upward more steeply. The first major hairpin was coming. Nathan could see it ahead, the place where the pavement cut hard to the right, following the cliff face, with nothing but a flimsy guardrail between the road and a 300-foot drop to the rocks and river below. The Mercedes entered the turn still moving fast, too fast. Her brake lights blazed red. And nothing happened. The Mercedes shot forward instead of slowing, the physics of momentum and gravity conspiring against her. Nathan watched in horror as the car fishtailed, Jade's panicked overcorrection sending the rear end sliding toward the guardrail. She was trying to downshift, trying to use the engine to brake, but at that speed, on that incline, it wasn't enough. The car was going over. Nathan didn't think. Thinking was for engineers in clean offices with computer simulations and safety margins. This was pure instinct, muscle memory from a life he'd buried. He slammed his accelerator down and angled his truck to the left, pulling alongside the Mercedes on the inside of the turn. The move was insane. The road barely had room for 2 vehicles side by side, and that was when both drivers were cooperating. But Nathan had spent 15 years understanding vehicle dynamics, understanding weight transfer and friction coefficients, and the precise moment when physics moved from theoretical to catastrophic. He matched her speed, 70 miles per hour, 75. His truck was screaming, every bolt and weld protesting. Through her window he could see Jade's face, white with terror, her hands locked on the wheel, her mouth open in a scream he couldn't hear over the roar of engines and wind. He motioned frantically. "Roll down your window!" She didn't respond, couldn't respond, lost in panic. So Nathan did the only thing he could. He turned his wheel slightly right, letting his truck's passenger side make contact with her driver's side door. The impact was gentle, controlled, a kiss of metal on metal. She felt it. Her head snapped toward him, her eyes wide with shock and recognition. The janitor. The crazy man from the parking garage. He shouted through both windows, his voice raw. "Neutral! Put it in neutral! Now!" For a moment, he thought she wouldn't do it. Why would she trust him? He was nobody. But survival instinct overrode doubt. Her hand moved to the gear shift. The high-pitched whine of her engine suddenly dropped as the transmission disengaged. Good. Good. Now steer with me. Follow my lead. They were approaching the second hairpin, the one that curved left, the one where the guardrail had been reinforced 3 times because so many people had gone through it. Nathan knew he had maybe 10 seconds to scrub off enough speed, or they were both dead. He pressed his truck harder against her car, increasing the contact, using friction to bleed off momentum. The sound was terrible, screaming metal, his truck's door crumpling, his side mirror exploding in a shower of glass and plastic. But they were slowing. 70, 65, 60. He pulled ahead slightly, positioning his truck's rear quarter panel against her front bumper, and began to brake. Not hard, that would send them both spinning. Gentle, progressive pressure, letting his truck's weight work with hers, 2 vehicles moving as one jury-rigged system. His brake pedal felt spongy. Of course it did. This truck had 200,000 miles on it, and brakes he'd been meaning to replace for 6 months. The irony would have been funny if they weren't about to die. 55 miles per hour. 50. The hairpin was coming up fast, a hard left turn that seemed to drop off into nothing but darkness and stars. Nathan could see the white memorial crosses in his headlights, pale reminders of everyone who hadn't made this turn. He wasn't going to add 2 more. He cut his wheel left, pulling away from her car just enough to give her room, and then hit his brakes hard, praying they'd hold. The truck shuddered, slewed sideways, the rear end trying to overtake the front. He counter-steered, found grip, and watched as the Mercedes followed his line, Jade's hands following his movements like they'd practiced this 1,000 times instead of never. She was good, even terrified. With no brakes, she was reading his intent and responding. They entered the turn at 40 miles per hour. Still too fast. Nathan felt his truck's right wheels lift off the pavement, felt that sickening moment of imbalance. He shifted his weight left, willing the truck to stay down, and it did, slamming back to earth with a bone-jarring crash. The Mercedes scraped along the inner cliff wall, paint and metal shrieking, sparks flying into the night, but she was through. They were through. The road straightened out for a quarter mile. Nathan's entire body was shaking with adrenaline, but he forced himself to stay focused. They were still going 30 miles per hour, and there were more turns coming. He pulled alongside her again, this time on the right, and began the process again. Controlled contact, friction. Physics turned from enemy to reluctant ally. His truck's passenger side crumpled like aluminum foil against her armored executive sedan. 25 miles per hour, 20, 15. Ahead, a scenic pullout appeared, one of those observation areas where tourists stop to take photos of the valley below during daylight hours. It was empty now, just a flat expanse of gravel and a low stone wall. Nathan motioned toward it, and Jade nodded, understanding. Together, they guided their vehicles off the pavement onto the gravel, the loose stones adding precious friction. 10 miles per hour. 5. Nathan's truck shuddered to a stop 3 feet from the stone wall. The Mercedes rolled another 6 feet and stopped so close to the edge that her front bumper hung over empty space. If she'd been going 1 mile per hour faster, momentum would have carried her through the wall and over the cliff. For a long moment, there was only silence. The ticking of cooling engines, the wind rustling through pine trees, Nathan's ragged breathing. Then, the Mercedes's door flew open, and Jade Stratton stumbled out, her legs giving way immediately. She collapsed to her hands and knees on the gravel, her entire body shaking. Nathan climbed out of his truck, his own legs unsteady. Every muscle hurt. He was pretty sure he'd cracked a rib when the truck had slammed back down during that hairpin turn. But he was alive. They were both alive. "What did you do?" Jade's voice was hoarse, broken. "What the hell did you do to my car?" She wasn't looking at him. She was staring at her Mercedes, at the destroyed driver's side, at the front end hanging in space. Then she stood on shaking legs and turned to face him, and he saw rage replacing fear in her eyes. This was Jade Stratton, CEO, back in control, looking for someone to blame. "You ran me off the road. You could have killed us both. You're insane. I'm calling the police." She pulled out her phone, but her hands were shaking too badly to unlock it. Nathan watched her struggle for a moment, then spoke quietly. "Your brakes were cut. Someone sabotaged your car in the parking garage about 20 minutes ago. That stopped her." She looked up, her face pale in the moonlight. "What?" "I saw them. I tried to warn you, but you didn't hear me. Or you thought I was crazy." He gestured toward her car. "Check under the front driver's side. You'll see the brake line. You're lying. This is some kind of—" She trailed off, uncertainty creeping into her voice. Why would anyone? Nathan walked to her car, knelt down despite the pain in his ribs, and pulled out his phone's flashlight. "Come here, see for yourself." Jade approached slowly, like he might be dangerous. She crouched beside him, and he angled the light under the car. There, clear as day, was the severed brake line, the cut clean and deliberate, not the ragged tear of wear or accident. Brake fluid had sprayed all over the undercarriage and dripped onto the gravel below, forming a small, dark puddle. "Oh, God." Jade's hand went to her mouth. "Oh, my God. Someone tried to—" Her voice broke. "Someone tried to kill me." She stood abruptly, backing away from the car like it had become a threat. She turned in a circle, looking at the dark trees, the empty road, suddenly aware of how isolated they were. Her breathing came faster, panic reasserting itself. "Hey." Nathan stood, keeping his distance, keeping his voice calm. "You're safe now. I called 911 before I left the garage. Police are on their way. You're going to be okay. Who are you?" The question came out sharp, desperate. How did you know what to do? No janitor drives like that. No one drives like that. Nathan hesitated. This was the question he'd been dreading, the one that would pull at the threads of the life he'd carefully constructed. But he'd just saved her life. She deserved the truth. My name is Nathan Faulkner. I used to be an automotive engineer, brake system specialist. Recognition flickered across her face. Nathan Faulkner. The Nathan Faulkner? From Velocity Automotive? That was a long time ago. You revolutionized brake safety design. Your dual redundancy system is industry standard now. There are articles about you in engineering journals. You just disappeared 15 years ago. Everyone wondered what happened to you. I found a new line of work. His voice was flat, designed to end the conversation. But Jade Stratton hadn't built a career by accepting non-answers. She studied him in the moonlight, really seeing him for the first time. The janitor's coveralls, the calloused hands, the exhaustion etched into his face. The pieces weren't fitting together. Why? Why would someone like you be mopping floors? Because mopping floors doesn't kill people. The words came out harsher than he intended, sharp with old pain. Jade flinched, but she didn't back down. She took a step closer, her CEO armor cracking to reveal something more human underneath. What happened? Nathan looked away toward the cliff edge, toward the darkness that went down and down. My wife died in a car accident. Brake failure. I'd inspected the vehicle myself 2 weeks before, signed off on it, told her it was safe. There was a manufacturing defect I missed, a stress fracture in a caliper assembly. He forced himself to meet Jade's eyes. So yes, I know about brakes. I know exactly how they fail. And I know what happens when someone you love trusts you and you let them down. The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared understanding of loss. When Jade finally spoke, her voice was soft. You have a daughter, Amber, right? I've seen her picture on your employee file. Nathan's head snapped up. You looked at my file? After you saved my life, I wanted to know who you were. Jade's expression was unreadable. The file said you're a single father, that she has a chronic respiratory condition, that your insurance is through us, but you work 3 jobs to cover the co-pays and medications. Nathan said nothing. What could he say? It was all true. I'm sorry. For your wife. For everything you've been through. Jade wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking small despite her expensive suit and commanding presence. I lost my father 3 years ago. Heart attack in his office. He built Stratton Automotive from nothing, and then one day he was just gone. The board made me CEO because they thought I'd be easy to control. A placeholder. His daughter playing pretend. But you're not a placeholder. No, Jade's voice hardened. I'm not. I've fought them every day for 3 years, every decision questioned, every initiative undermined. There's one man in particular, Derek Hammond, my COO. He makes it very clear he thinks a woman can't run an automotive company, that I'm destroying my father's legacy just by sitting in his chair. You think he did this? Nathan gestured toward the car. Jade was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. He's been pushing for a board vote to remove me, but he doesn't have the support. Not yet. An accident, though. A tragic loss of the CEO on the same dangerous road where her father used to drive. That would change everything. The board would be in chaos, and Derek would be right there, steady and competent, ready to step in and save the company. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees. Help was coming. Jade looked at Nathan, really looked at him, and he saw something shift in her expression. Calculation, assessment, recognition of an opportunity. Nathan Faulkner. The question came out formal, precise. Would you be willing to make a statement to the police about what you saw in the parking garage? Of course. And would you be willing to consult with me, privately, on the safety of our current vehicle line? If Derek is willing to kill me to take over the company, I need to know what other corners he might have cut. Nathan wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at him to walk away, to go back to his safe, small life where the only thing at stake was clean floors and timely trash removal. But he thought of the figure in the parking garage. He thought of Jade's car hanging over the cliff edge. He thought of Sarah and all the other people who died because someone somewhere decided that profit mattered more than lives. I'll help, he heard himself say, but I'm not going back to engineering. This is temporary, just until you know you're safe. Jade extended her hand. Deal. Nathan shook it, her grip firm and steady despite everything she'd just been through. As the police cars pulled into the overlook, their lights painting everything in shades of emergency, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just agreed to something far more complicated than a simple consultation. He'd spent 5 years making himself invisible. Now, he'd just stepped back into the light, and something told him there was no going back to the shadows. The police detective's words still echoed in Nathan's mind as he pushed his mop across the executive floor 48 hours after the incident. We appreciate your statement, Mr. Faulkner, but without video evidence or witnesses, it's your word against a dark parking garage. We'll keep investigating. Jade had offered him paid leave. Actually, she'd practically ordered it, standing in the hospital where they'd both been checked for injuries, her arm in a sling from where she'd wrenched her shoulder. Take time off. Full pay. You've been through a trauma. But Nathan had refused. He needed the work. Amber's next specialist appointment was in 2 weeks, and the copay alone was $800. Besides, what would he do at home except think about how close they'd come to dying? At least here, with the familiar rhythm of cleaning, he could pretend everything was normal. Except nothing was normal anymore. The elevator dinged behind him, an unusual sound at 11:30 on a Thursday night. The executive floor was supposed to be empty. Nathan turned, mop in hand, and watched Jade Stratton step out carrying a leather briefcase and 2 paper coffee cups. She ditched the sling, though he could see the careful way she held her left arm. Oh. She stopped, looking almost embarrassed. I didn't realize you'd be here. It's my shift, Nathan said evenly. Same as always. Right? Of course. Jade held up the coffee cups awkwardly. I was just going to work late, catching up on some things. She gestured vaguely toward her office at the end of the hall. Nathan nodded and went back to mopping. He heard her heels click away, heard her office door open and close. He continued his methodical work, moving from conference room to conference room, emptying trash cans, wiping down glass walls. An hour passed, then another. At 1:15 in the morning, Jade's office door opened again. Nathan? Her voice carried down the empty hallway. Do you have a minute? He found her standing in front of a massive whiteboard covered in production schedules and safety compliance charts. The second coffee cup sat untouched on her desk, still steaming. She'd bought it for him. The realization was strange, unsettling in its thoughtfulness. I wanted to thank you again. Properly. Jade turned to face him. What you did. What you risked. I can never repay that. You don't need to. Nathan stayed in the doorway, maintaining distance. Anyone would have done the same. No. Jade's laugh was bitter. They wouldn't have. Do you know how many people saw me leave that parking garage? Security cameras caught at least 6 other employees in the building. Not one of them called. Not one of them chased after me. She picked up the extra coffee cup and held it out to him. But you did. Nathan hesitated, then stepped forward and accepted it. The warmth felt good against his hands. I saw what was happening. I couldn't just let it happen. Because of your wife. The statement hung between them, too perceptive, too close to the truth. Nathan said nothing. Jade returned to her whiteboard, studying it like it held answers to questions she hadn't figured out how to ask yet. The police investigation isn't going anywhere. The security footage from the parking garage mysteriously corrupted. All 6 cameras. My head of security, Owen Reeves, says it's a technical malfunction, a corrupted hard drive. Convenient. Very. Jade turned back to him and Nathan saw exhaustion etched into her face. Exhaustion and something else. Fear. Carefully controlled but present. Derek was appropriately shocked when I told him about the accident. He sent flowers to the hospital, offered to take on more responsibilities while I recover. She paused. He's been pushing for me to approve the new Summit line for production. 18 months of development, ready to hit the market in 3 months. Nathan knew the Summit. Everyone in the building knew about it. Stratton's first fully electric luxury SUV, positioned to compete with the premium market. Billboards around the city already advertised it, pre-orders in the thousands, and you're hesitating. The safety tests feel rushed. Jade pulled up a file on her laptop and spun it around so Nathan could see. The screen showed columns of data, test results, compliance metrics. Everything looks fine on paper. Better than fine. Perfect. She met his eyes. Too perfect. Nathan set down his coffee and moved closer, his engineering brain already analyzing the numbers before his conscious mind gave permission. He scanned the crash test data, the brake performance metrics, the structural integrity reports. His finger traced one particular line. "This is impossible," he said quietly. "What?" "This number, the deceleration rate from 60 miles per hour to 0. It's showing an average of 2.8 seconds across 15 test runs." He looked up at Jade. "That's not just good. It's better than anything on the market, better than physics should allow for a vehicle that weight. Maybe we've made a breakthrough, or someone's falsifying data." Nathan pulled the laptop closer, his fingers flying across the keyboard, pulling up supplementary files, looking for the raw test footage that should accompany every safety trial. "Where are the videos?" Derek said they were taking up too much server space. He had them archived. "Convenient," Nathan said again. He sat down in Jade's chair without asking permission, lost in the data, the engineer in him awakening after 5 years of forced sleep. He pulled up more files, cross-referencing production specifications with test results. The deeper he went, the more wrong it all felt. These brake calibrations don't match the rotor specifications. Someone changed them after testing. "Are you sure?" Nathan pulled up 2 documents side by side. "Here, test date shows March 15th. Brake rotors specified as 14-inch diameter, ventilated performance grade. But here, in the production order from April 2nd, they're listed as 13-inch solid standard grade." He looked at Jade. "That's a significant downgrade. Cheaper, yes, but not what was tested. Not what your customers are expecting." Jade's face had gone pale. "How much cheaper?" "Approximately $90 per vehicle. Multiply that by the initial production run of 20,000 units. $1.8 million. Jade's voice was hollow. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through emails. Every production order goes through Derek's office. He signs off on all vendor contracts. Nathan kept digging, pulling up more files, finding more discrepancies. The pattern was clear once you knew to look for it. Cheaper brake pads, lower-grade suspension components, modified airbag deployment algorithms that met minimum legal standards but fell short of the performance promised in marketing materials. None of it was illegal, technically. Just corners cut, profits prioritized, safety margins reduced. If these vehicles perform in real-world conditions the way they performed in legitimate tests, you're looking at a recall within the first year. Maybe sooner. Nathan leaned back in the chair, his mind racing through failure scenarios. Someone panic stops on the highway. Those brakes aren't going to respond the way they expect. He met Jade's horrified gaze. People are going to get hurt, and when they do, the CEO takes the fall. Jade's voice was barely a whisper. "I approved the summit line. My signature is on the final production order. When the recalls start, when the lawsuits come, Derek will have documentation showing he raised concerns that I ignored." She sank into the chair across from her own desk. "He's not just trying to kill me. He's destroying my father's company and making sure I take the blame." Nathan thought about the figure in the parking garage, about the deliberate cut brake line, about security footage that conveniently disappeared. He thought about Derek Hammond, a man he'd seen exactly 3 times in 5 years, always impeccably dressed, always projecting confidence and competence. A man who smiled at everyone and remembered no one. A man who'd been chief operating officer for 7 years, overlooked for the CEO position when the board chose the founder's daughter instead. He's been planning this for a long time, Nathan said. The sabotage, the production changes. He's building a narrative. Incompetent female CEO ignores safety, causes massive recalls, costs the company billions. Board has no choice but to remove her. And there's Derek, ready to step in, the steady hand, the one who tried to warn everyone. "Can you prove it?" Jade asked. "Any of it, not from these files." Nathan gestured at the laptop. "This shows the discrepancies, but not who ordered them. We'd need internal emails, vendor communications, the actual approval chain." He paused. And that's assuming Derek hasn't covered his tracks, which he clearly has. Jade stood and walked to her window, looking out over the city lights. So we know the truth, but we can't prove it. The police investigation is stalled, security is compromised, and in 3 months, 18,000 defective vehicles are going to roll off the line with my name attached to them. Not if we stop production. I don't have the authority without board approval, and I can't go to the board with suspicions. They already think I'm paranoid about Derek. She turned back to Nathan. After the brake line incident, 3 board members suggested I take medical leave. For stress. Said I'm imagining conspiracies. They're protecting their investment. If Derek's been manipulating production for cost savings, short-term profits look good. The board sees strong margins. Nathan stood. They won't believe you until it's too late. Then what do we do? Jade asked the question, but Nathan saw something shift in her expression. She was testing him, measuring him. This wasn't helplessness. This was strategy. She already had ideas. She wanted to know if he was truly committed or just playing Good Samaritan before retreating to safety. We need proof, Nathan said slowly. Real proof. Documentation that directly ties Derek to the falsified tests and production changes, which is in his office, behind locked doors and security protocols. Nathan thought about his key card. Janitors had access everywhere. They were invisible, trusted by default, because who pays attention to the people who clean? He thought about his cart, about the hundreds of offices he'd entered over 5 years, about trash cans that held crumpled memos and forgotten printouts. I can get into his office, Nathan heard himself say, tonight, while he's gone. That's breaking and entering. Jade's voice was careful, deliberately neutral. If you're caught, you lose your job. Possibly face charges. If I don't, people die. Nathan met her eyes. I've been cleaning this building for 5 years. I know every security camera, every guard rotation, every blind spot. Derek's office is on my route. I have a legitimate reason to be there. And if something's password protected, if the important files are on his personal computer, then we're no worse off than we are now. Nathan picked up his coffee cup, found it had gone cold. But people like Derek, they're arrogant. They think they're untouchable. That makes them careless. I've seen it before in the industry. Engineers who cut corners because they're convinced they're smarter than everyone else. They leave trails because they never imagine anyone will look. Jade studied him for a long moment. Why are you doing this? You could walk away. Go back to mopping floors and pretending you're nobody. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. The words came out harder than Nathan intended. My wife died because someone decided profit mattered more than safety. Because someone cut a corner and told themselves it would be fine. Because the engineer who was supposed to catch it, me, was too confident in his own abilities to double-check the manufacturer's certifications. He set down the cup. I can't bring her back. I can't fix what I broke. But I can stop it from happening to someone else's family. The honesty of it seemed to surprise them both. Jade's expression softened, the CEO mask slipping to reveal genuine emotion. Okay, she said quietly. We do this together, but carefully. If Derek even suspects we're investigating him, he'll accelerate his timeline, Nathan finished. Make it look like I'm an obsessed stalker. Make you look paranoid. Discredit us both before we can expose him. Exactly. Then we move fast. Tonight, I check his office, see what I can find. Nathan pulled out his phone and checked the time. 2:17 in the morning. Derek won't be back until 8 at the earliest. That gives us nearly 6 hours. Us? You think I know what I'm looking for in corporate files? Nathan almost smiled. I'm an engineer, not a lawyer. You need to tell me what documents matter, what proves intent versus honest mistakes. Jade grabbed her laptop and a notepad. Then let's make a list. And Nathan? Her voice stopped him as he headed for the door. Thank you. For caring. For not walking away. Nathan thought about Amber, asleep at home with Mrs. Callahan. He thought about all the other children out there whose parents would buckle them into Summit SUVs, trusting that Stratton Automotive had built something safe. He thought about Sarah, about the last time he'd seen her alive, about the absolute trust in her eyes when he'd told her the car was fine. I'm not doing this for you, he said quietly. I'm doing it for everyone who believes that when they buy a car, someone actually made sure it won't kill them." He walked out before she could respond, heading for the supply closet where his cart waited. But this time, when he pushed it toward the executive offices, he wasn't going to clean. He was going hunting. And somewhere in this building, in locked files and password-protected documents, was the evidence that would either save Jade Stratton's company or prove that Nathan Faulkner had spent 5 years hiding from a battle that had been waiting for him all along. Derek Hammond's office had been exactly as arrogant as Nathan predicted. The file cabinet wasn't even locked. Inside, Nathan found everything: emails to vendors requesting cheaper components after safety testing was complete, spreadsheets showing cost savings from the substitutions, and most damning of all, a folder labeled Transition Strategy that laid out in meticulous detail how Derek planned to document Jade's alleged incompetence, force a board vote, and position himself as the savior who'd rescue the company from her mismanagement. Nathan had photographed everything with his phone, his hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Jade had stood watch by the door, her own phone ready to create a distraction if anyone approached. But the executive floor stayed empty, silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the quiet click of Nathan's camera. They'd compiled the evidence into a presentation by 4 in the morning, working side by side in Jade's office. It was airtight, undeniable. Derek's own documents convicted him. By Monday morning, they'd planned to present everything to the board, to the police, to federal safety regulators if necessary. Justice was finally within reach. Then Nathan's phone rang. The number was Mrs. Callahan's. His neighbor never called during his shift unless something was wrong. Nathan answered, his stomach already dropping. "Nathan, you need to come home right now." Mrs. Callahan's voice was tight with controlled panic. "Amber can't breathe. I called 911. They're taking her to Mercy General." The phone nearly slipped from Nathan's hands. "I'm on my way." He was already moving, grabbing his jacket, his keys, everything forgotten except the desperate need to get to his daughter. Jade caught his arm. "What happened?" "My daughter." "Hospital. I have to go. Go. I'll drive you." "No, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking." Jade was already grabbing her own keys. "You're in no condition to drive." "Come on." The drive to Mercy General took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Nathan sat in the passenger seat of Jade's replacement vehicle, his leg bouncing with nervous energy, his mind conjuring every worst-case scenario. Amber had always been fragile, her lungs scarred from repeated infections, but she'd been stable for months. What had changed? What had he missed while he was playing detective in Derek Hammond's office? Jade pulled up to the emergency entrance, and Nathan was out before the car fully stopped, sprinting through automatic doors that opened too slowly. The nurse at the desk directed him to pediatric ICU. 3rd floor, room 312. He found Mrs. Callahan in the hallway outside Amber's room, her face streaked with tears. She grabbed his hands when she saw him. She woke up gasping, couldn't catch her breath. "I gave her the inhaler like you showed me, but it didn't help." "Nathan, I'm so sorry. I should have. This isn't your fault." Nathan squeezed her hands, then pushed into the room. Amber lay in a hospital bed that made her look impossibly small, an oxygen mask covering her face, monitors, beeping steadily around her. Her eyes found him immediately, and he saw fear there, the kind of fear that no 8-year-old should ever have to feel. "Daddy." Her voice was muffled by the mask, weak and thready. "Hey, Firefly." Nathan took her hand, careful not to disturb the IV line taped to her arm. "I'm here. You're going to be okay." A doctor entered behind him, a tired-looking woman in her 50s with kind eyes. "Mr. Faulkner?" "I'm Dr. Patel. Your daughter is stable for now, but we need to talk about next steps." They stepped into the hallway. Jade had arrived and stood with Mrs. Callahan, giving them space but close enough to hear. Amber's having an acute respiratory episode. Her lung capacity is significantly reduced. Dr. Patel pulled up x-rays on a tablet, showing cloudy areas in Amber's chest that Nathan's untrained eye could still recognize as wrong. "We need to perform a bronchoscopy and possibly a more invasive procedure to clear the inflammation in scar tissue. Without intervention, her condition will continue to deteriorate." "How soon?" ideally within the next 48 hours. I've scheduled her for tomorrow morning pending insurance authorization." The words, insurance authorization, hit Nathan like a physical blow. How much? The procedure itself is around $45,000, with her existing pre-authorization limits and your current deductible status. Dr. Patel's expression was sympathetic. "You're looking at about $32,000 out of pocket." Nathan felt the floor tilt beneath him. $32,000. He had $800 in his checking account, maybe $2,000 in savings that he'd been building up for Amber's next specialist visit. He'd already maxed out the one credit card he had paying for last year's hospitalization. "I don't—" He stopped, his mind racing. "Can we do a payment plan?" "Of course. We can work something out. But Mr. Faulkner, I need to be clear. This isn't optional. Your daughter needs this procedure. The payment arrangements can be sorted out, but we need your authorization to move forward. Yes, do it. Whatever she needs." He'd figure out the money somehow. Sell the truck. Take out loans. It didn't matter. Amber came first. Amber came only. Dr. Patel nodded and walked away to begin preparations. Nathan leaned against the wall, his eyes closed, trying to process the impossible math of survival. $32,000. He'd been so focused on helping Jade, on pursuing justice, on redeeming himself for Sarah's death, that he'd taken his eyes off the only thing that truly mattered. And now, Amber was paying the price. Jade approached quietly. "Nathan, I heard what the doctor said. I'll handle it." His voice came out harsher than intended. "This isn't your problem. Let me help. Please." "No." He opened his eyes, met her gaze. "I appreciate everything, but I can't. I won't take charity. It's not charity." Jade's voice was firm, brooking no argument. "I want to hire you, officially, as Chief of Automotive Safety. It's a position I've been planning to create anyway, someone independent who reports directly to me, who has veto power over any vehicle that doesn't meet safety standards. I'm a janitor." Nathan laughed, a broken sound. "I haven't worked as an engineer in 5 years. You worked as an engineer 2 hours ago when you analyzed Derek's files and identified every safety compromise he made." Jade pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. "The position comes with full executive benefits, including health insurance with no lifetime caps and retroactive coverage from your start date. Your daughter's procedure would be fully covered." Nathan stared at her. You can't just create a position out of thin air. I'm the CEO. I absolutely can. The board will approve it, especially when I explain that our new chief of safety just uncovered massive fraud in our production process." She looked up from her phone. "This isn't a handout, Nathan. This is me hiring the best person for a job that desperately needs doing. A job that will save lives. Your pride doesn't get to stop that from happening." The offer hung between them, salvation and obligation wrapped together. Nathan thought about Amber, about her trust in him, about the way she'd looked at Sarah's photo that morning and said she wished Mommy could see how brave Daddy was being. He thought about the Summit SUVs rolling off the production line, about all the families who would trust Stratton Automotive with their lives. "I can't abandon the investigation. We're so close to exposing Derek." "You're not abandoning anything. We do this together after Amber's procedure." Jade's expression softened. "Your daughter comes first. The evidence isn't going anywhere. Derek doesn't know we have it yet. We have time." "Do we?" Nathan gestured toward the hospital, toward everything falling apart. "Because it feels like we're running out. Then let me help you buy more, please." Before Nathan could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He opened it and felt ice flood his veins. The message contained a single photo. Nathan standing in Derek Hammond's office, clearly taken from a security camera he'd thought was in a blind spot. Below it, text, "Funny place for a janitor to be at 2:30 a.m. Wonder what the police would make of this." Jade's phone buzzed simultaneously. Her face went white as she read her own message. It was from Derek, sent to her, and CC'd to the entire board. Emergency meeting called for 9 a.m. Monday. Motion to remove CEO for cause. Evidence of gross negligence and conspiracy will be presented. He knows. Jade's voice was barely a whisper. "He knows we found his files." Nathan's phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from the county court system. He'd been served electronically with a restraining order. Derek Hammond was the petitioner, claiming Nathan Faulkner had stalked and harassed him, had sabotaged Jade Stratton's vehicle, in a deranged attempt to play hero, and posed a clear danger to Stratton Automotive employees. Effective immediately, Nathan was barred from entering company property or contacting any Stratton employees aside from Jade. "He's destroying us." Nathan showed Jade the restraining order. "I can't testify at the board meeting. I can't even enter the building to get the physical evidence from his office. The evidence we photographed is on our phones, easily dismissed as doctored, especially with Derek claiming I'm obsessed and dangerous." Jade's hands shook as she scrolled through Derek's email to the board. "He's attached documents showing I approved the Summit production changes. My signature is on everything because that's how the approval process works. But without the context of his vendor communications, it looks like I knowingly cut corners." Nathan felt the walls closing in. Derek had moved faster than they had anticipated, had covered his tracks better than they had hoped. The man was a chess master, and they just realized they were already in checkmate. Mrs. Callahan appeared in the doorway to Amber's room. "Nathan, she's asking for you." He went to his daughter, sinking into the chair beside her bed. Amber had removed her oxygen mask, her breathing still labored but stable enough for conversation. "Daddy, you look sad." Her small hand found his. "Is it because of the hospital? I'm sorry I got sick again." "No, baby, this isn't your fault." Nathan tried to smile, tried to be strong for her. "I'm just worried about you. Dr. Patel says I need surgery." Amber's voice was matter of fact, the voice of a child who'd spent too much of her life in hospitals. "Will it make me better?" "Yes, it will make you so much better." "Then don't be sad." Amber's eyes, so much like Sarah's, looked at him with absolute trust. "You're the bravest person I know. You saved that lady from the car crash. Mrs. Callahan told me. That was different." "Why?" "Saving people is saving people." Amber coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made Nathan's heart clench. "Mommy used to say you helped keep everyone safe with the cars you made. That's what heroes do." "I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I'm just your dad. You can be both." Amber smiled, a fragile thing. "Mommy would want you to help people, to stop the bad people from hurting others like she got hurt." She paused, considering. "Are you helping stop bad people now?" Nathan thought about Derek, about the Summit SUVs, about all the families who would trust their lives to vehicles designed to fail. He thought about Jade, facing a hostile board alone, her father's legacy being destroyed by a man who cared only about power and profit. "I'm trying," he said quietly, "but it's complicated. Grown-up stuff always is." Amber squeezed his hand with surprising strength. "But you'll figure it out. You always do. And then you'll come back and tell me all about it, okay? After the surgery, when I'm better." Something broke open in Nathan's chest, some last wall of resistance he'd been maintaining. His 8-year-old daughter, lying in a hospital bed facing surgery, was comforting him, telling him to be brave, giving him permission to fight. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, Firefly, I promise." He stayed with her until she fell asleep, her small chest rising and falling with effort. Then he stepped into the hallway where Jade waited. "I'll take the job." His voice was steady now, certain. "Chief of Automotive Safety, full benefits, everything you offered." Jade nodded, relief washing over her face. "I'll have HR process the paperwork tonight. The insurance authorization will go through by morning, and then we fight." Nathan met her eyes. "Derek's got us cornered, but he's made a mistake. He's rushed his timeline. He's acting out of panic, not strategy. That means he'll make errors. The board meeting is in 36 hours. Jade gestured at her phone. "With the restraining order, you can't testify. You can't even be in the building. I don't need to be in the building." Nathan pulled up the photos he'd taken in Derek's office. "We have digital copies of everything. You present them. He'll claim they're fake, that we conspired to frame him. Then we need someone who can verify they're authentic, someone the board trusts more than Derek." Nathan's mind was racing now, the engineer in him solving problems, finding solutions. Your head of security, Owen Reeves. He reports to Derek, but he's also responsible for the security footage that mysteriously corrupted. If we can prove he was involved in the cover-up, if we can get him to flip, he won't. Jade shook her head. Owen has been with the company for 12 years. He's loyal to Derek. Everyone has a price. The question is whether it's money or conscience. Nathan checked the time. We have 36 hours to find out which one Owen Reeves values more. And if we can't, then Derek wins. He takes over Stratton Automotive, you lose your father's company, and 18,000 defective vehicles go to families who trust they're safe. Nathan thought about Amber, about Sarah, about every person who'd ever buckled a seatbelt and assumed the machine around them was built by people who cared if they lived or died. We can't let that happen. Jade was quiet for a long moment. Then she extended her hand. Partners? Nathan shook it. Partners. They stood in the sterile hospital hallway, two people who'd been strangers a week ago, now bound together by circumstance and choice. Outside, dawn was breaking over the city. In 36 hours, Derek Hammond would face the board with his doctored evidence and smooth lies. He had power, position, and a plan years in the making. But Nathan and Jade had something Derek had never understood, the absolute refusal to let innocent people pay the price for someone else's greed. It wasn't much of an advantage. But sometimes, Nathan thought, remembering Sarah's smile and Amber's trust and Jade's quiet courage on that mountain road, sometimes it was enough. They had 36 hours to prove it. The 36 hours had passed in a blur of hospital vigils and desperate planning. Amber's surgery had gone perfectly, Dr. Patel emerging from the OR with a smile that made Nathan's knees weak with relief. His daughter was breathing easier already, her oxygen levels the best they'd been in months. As she recovered in her room, Nathan had kissed her forehead and made a promise. When she woke up, he'd tell her how the story ended. Now, standing outside the Stratton Automotive boardroom at 8:57 on Monday morning, Nathan wondered if that ending would be victory or defeat. He couldn't enter. The restraining order was explicit, backed by court authority and Derek's lawyers. One step through those doors and he'd be arrested, his testimony invalidated, his credibility destroyed. So he stood in the hallway with Jade, both of them silent, watching through the glass walls as the board members filed in. 12 men and women who held the company's future in their hands, most of them looking grim and uncomfortable. Derek Hammond arrived last, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, carrying a leather portfolio that Nathan knew contained lies wrapped in official-looking documents. Derek saw them through the glass and smiled, a predator's expression. He made a show of checking his watch, then pointed at Nathan and shook his head mockingly. "Can't come in." The gesture was clear. Jade's hand found Nathan's. Her fingers were ice cold. "I have the digital evidence. I have the presentation, but without you there to verify it, to explain the technical details." "I know." Nathan squeezed her hand. "You have to do this alone. I'm terrified I'm going to fail." Her voice cracked. "That I'll lose my father's company because I can't make them believe me. You won't fail." Nathan turned to face her. "You're not the uncertain CEO they think you are. You're the woman who kept control of a car with no brakes on a mountain road. You're strong enough for this." The board chairman, a silver-haired man named Robert Faulkner, no relation, called the meeting to order. Jade took a breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked into the room. Nathan watched through the glass, helpless. Derek stood first, his presentation smooth and devastating. He displayed documents showing Jade's signature on production approvals. He showed cost overruns under her leadership. He painted a picture of a CEO out of her depth, making dangerous decisions, putting the company at risk. And then he revealed his masterpiece, the restraining order against Nathan Faulkner, spinning a tale of Jade being manipulated by an unstable former employee with a savior complex who'd staged the brake line cutting himself. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Doubt clouded their faces. Derek was winning. Jade stood when it was her turn. Her voice was steady as she presented the counter-evidence, the photos from Derek's office, the vendor. Communications, the spreadsheets showing deliberate cost-cutting after safety testing. But Nathan could see the board's skepticism. Without him there to verify the documents, without his expertise to explain the technical implications, it looked like exactly what Derek claimed, a desperate CEO grasping at conspiracy theories. Board member Patricia Walsh raised her hand. Ms. Stratton, these documents could be fabricated. How do we verify their authenticity? I have someone who can verify them, Jade's voice was clear. Nathan Faulkner, our new chief of automotive safety. He discovered this evidence during a routine safety audit. The man who has a restraining order against him for stalking? Derek's voice dripped with false concern. The man who can't be here because the court deemed him a threat? You're asking us to trust someone who isn't even allowed in the building? Nathan watched Jade's face through the glass. He saw her falter, saw the doubt creep in. The board was going to vote. Derek was going to win. Everything they'd fought for was slipping away. Then the elevator at the end of the hall dinged. Two people stepped out, Detective Sarah Morrison and Detective James Park, both from the fraud division of the city police department. Nathan had met them 30 hours earlier at Dr. Patel's office when he delivered copies of all the evidence along with a detailed written statement. If anything happens to me, he'd told the doctor, if I can't speak at the board meeting, make sure these get to the police. Mr. Faulkner, Detective Morrison approached with a slight smile. We've been reviewing your evidence. Very thorough, very damning. Were you able to verify it? We did more than that. Detective Park held up his own tablet. We executed a warrant on Mr. Hammond's office computers this morning. Forensic IT pulled some very interesting files. Turns out he kept backups of everything, including communications with vendors about substituting substandard parts and keeping the cost savings off the official books. He also kept detailed records of bribing the head of security to corrupt parking garage footage. Nathan's heart leaped. Owen Reeves flipped? Didn't need to. Detective Morrison's smile widened. Mr. Hammond was too arrogant to encrypt his files properly. We found everything, including emails discussing the best method to cut a brake line so it would fail miles from the sabotage point. So it's real. You can prove it. Already have. We arrested Mr. Reeves an hour ago. He's cooperating fully in exchange for reduced charges. Detective Park gestured toward the boardroom. Now we just need to arrest the main perpetrator. And since you're listed as a key witness, that restraining order has been vacated by the court. You're free to enter. Nathan looked at the detectives, at Jade visible through the glass, at Derek still presenting his lies with polished confidence. Then he straightened his shoulders and walked toward the boardroom doors. He pushed them open mid-sentence, Derek's voice cutting off as 12 faces turned toward the interruption. The detectives flanked Nathan, their presence adding official weight to his arrival. I apologize for the interruption. Nathan's voice was calm, steady, the voice of a man who'd spent 15 years knowing exactly how to speak with authority about automotive safety. My name is Nathan Faulkner. I'm Stratton Automotive's Chief of Automotive Safety, and I have information relevant to this meeting. Derek's face went pale, then red. You can't be here. There's a court order. That's been vacated. Detective Morrison stepped forward, showing her badge. We're here on official police business. Mr. Faulkner is a material witness in our investigation into corporate fraud and attempted murder. The room erupted, board members talking over each other, demanding explanations. Robert Faulkner, the chairman, banged his gavel. Order! Everyone sit down! He looked at Nathan. You have 5 minutes. Make them count. Nathan connected his phone to the room's display system. The first image appeared, Derek's own spreadsheet showing cost savings from brake component substitutions. I spent 15 years as a brake systems engineer before I came to work here. I know what happens when someone prioritizes profit over safety. I know because my wife died when faulty brakes that I'd approved failed on a highway. He clicked to the next image, Derek's email to a vendor explicitly requesting cheaper brake rotors after safety testing was complete. This is what corporate negligence looks like. Not mistakes, not oversights, deliberate decisions to put defective products into consumers' hands while hiding the truth. For the next 4 minutes, Nathan walked the board through the evidence with surgical precision. He explained the technical implications of each substitution. He showed them the math, how much money Derek had saved, how many lives he'd endangered. He displayed the vendor communications, the falsified test results, the backup documentation that Derek had kept because he'd never imagined anyone would look. And then Nathan showed them the security footage that Detective Park's team had recovered from off-site backups. The parking garage, time-stamped the night of Jade's accident. A figure in dark clothes approaching her Mercedes, the same figure, face now visible in enhanced resolution, cutting the brake line. Derek Hammond's face. The boardroom was utterly silent. I used to think that walking away from automotive engineering was the only way to honor my wife's memory. Nathan's voice was quieter now, but it carried to every corner of the room. I thought that if I made myself invisible, if I never touched another brake system, I could never hurt anyone again. But I was wrong. Hiding doesn't honor the dead. Preventing others from dying the same way, that's how we honor them. He looked directly at Derek, who sat frozen, his polished confidence shattered. You tried to kill Jade Stratton because she threatened your power. You compromised vehicle safety because it increased your profit margins. You turned this company into a weapon aimed at innocent families. He paused. That ends today. Derek Hammond, Detective Morrison stepped forward. You're under arrest for attempted murder, corporate fraud, and violations of federal safety regulations. She began reading his rights as Detective Park produced handcuffs. The board members sat in stunned silence as Derek was led from the room, his protests echoing down the hallway until the elevator doors closed. Robert Faulkner cleared his throat. He looked at Jade, then at Nathan, then at the evidence still displayed on the screen. Ms. Stratton, it appears we owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually. Jade stood, and Nathan saw tears in her eyes that she refused to let fall. The company owes Nathan Faulkner everything. Without his expertise, his courage, and his refusal to let profit matter more than lives, we would have released 18,000 defective vehicles into the market. The recalls, the lawsuits, the deaths that would have followed, they would have destroyed everything my father built. The board voted unanimously to retain Jade as CEO. They voted unanimously to halt Summit production pending a complete safety overhaul. And they voted unanimously to approve Nathan's position as Chief of Automotive Safety, with full authority to veto any vehicle that didn't meet his standards. 3 months later, Nathan stood on a stage beside Jade, camera flashes painting everything in stark bursts of light. Behind them, a massive screen displayed the new Stratton safety system, a revolutionary brake design that Nathan had spent 12 weeks developing, incorporating lessons learned from 15 years of guilt and 5 years of hiding. The stock market had responded to Stratton's transparency with enthusiasm. Rather than collapse, the company's value had soared. Investors rewarded honesty over cover-ups, safety over shortcuts. Orders for the redesigned Summit, now with the new safety systems, exceeded projections by 40%. But the moment that mattered most to Nathan came when Jade stepped to the microphone and announced the Sarah Faulkner Foundation, dedicated to providing free vehicle safety inspections for low-income families who couldn't afford proper maintenance. My father built this company on the principle that everyone deserves safe transportation. Jade's voice was strong, certain. Sarah Faulkner died because that principle was betrayed. This foundation ensures that her death meant something, that other families won't face the same tragedy because they couldn't afford to keep their vehicles safe. In the front row, Amber sat beside Mrs. Callahan, her breathing clear and strong for the first time in her life. When Nathan caught her eye, she gave him a thumbs up and mouthed the words, "You did it, Daddy." After the press conference, Nathan returned to the parking garage, level P3, space number 1, where it had all begun. But instead of a mop and bucket, he carried tools and installation equipment. The first public brake safety check station, free for any Stratton employee to use, was being installed in the spot where Jade's Mercedes had once sat. Jade found him there an hour later. He was on his back, installing the hydraulic lift system that would allow people to easily inspect their own brake lines. She knelt beside him, handing him a wrench he'd been reaching for. "You know, you didn't have to come down here." Jade's tone was amused. "You're chief of safety now. You have people who can install equipment. I need to do this myself." Nathan tightened a bolt, testing its security. This spot, this is where I saw the brake fluid, where I made the choice to stop hiding. It feels right to put something here that helps instead of hurts." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Jade handing him tools, Nathan explaining what each component did. It reminded him of working with Sarah, of the easy partnership they'd had before tragedy tore it apart. "You saved my life twice," Jade said quietly. "Once on that mountain road, and once by helping me build a company my father would be proud of. A company that values human life over profit. You saved me too." Nathan slid out from under the lift, sitting up to face her. "You helped me see that my past didn't have to define my future. That honoring Sarah's memory didn't mean punishing myself forever. It meant preventing others from suffering the same fate." Jade smiled. "Partners?" "Partners." They finished the installation as the sun set, painting the parking garage in shades of orange and gold. The first safety check station was operational, ready to help keep people safe. It wasn't much, Nathan thought, just one station in one garage. But it was a start. Later that evening, Nathan found Amber waiting by their car, the new vehicle that Stratton had provided as part of his executive compensation package. A safe vehicle, a thoroughly inspected vehicle, a vehicle that Nathan himself had personally certified. "Can you teach me?" Amber asked, pointing at the hood. "How to check the brake fluid like you do?" Nathan opened the hood, his daughter standing beside him, both of them illuminated by the parking garage lights. He showed her how to locate the reservoir, how to check the fluid level, how to look for signs of leaks or contamination. She listened with absolute focus, asking smart questions, her hands steady as she checked the dipstick herself. "This is what Mommy would want, isn't it?" Amber looked up at him, her eyes wise beyond her 8 years. "For you to teach people to be safe, to help people." "Yes," Nathan said, his throat tight. "This is exactly what she would want." They stood there together in the parking garage that had witnessed so much, a father and daughter illuminated by fluorescent lights, checking brake fluid in a ritual as old as automotive history. But it was more than routine maintenance. It was legacy. It was love. It was the understanding that second chances and redemption were always possible, and that heroism often came from the most unexpected places. From janitors who refused to look away, from CEOs who chose truth over convenience, from little girls who reminded broken men that they still had the power to fix things. Nathan closed the hood, the click of the latch final and secure. Amber took his hand as they walked toward the elevator, toward home, toward whatever came next. Behind them, the new safety check station gleamed under the lights, ready to serve, ready to protect, ready to honor a promise made in a moment of crisis on a dark mountain road. The promise that at Stratton Automotive, from this day forward, no one would ever prioritize profit over the sanctity of human life. Not on Nathan Faulkner's watch. Not ever again. And somewhere, Nathan thought, Sarah was smiling.